not talking.
Is there somebody else up there?
Yeah.
All right.
Mr. Harper, next.
Operations? Yep.
Okay.
Ready to get queued up.
You got any exciting about the operation?
Maintenance.
Oh. Good thing we're in here with the chairs on here.
147, I was wondering. Okay.
I'm gonna take that over there. There's one anymore?
No.
We took all the good stuff.
All right, Mr. Harper.
You guys have been eating for 2 hours over there.
Now they bring it over.
This side of the table.
Oh, I'm
and then-
I'm
That's
watching
what
it.
it's trying. It's just only the good stuff.
Yes.
Can you eat some food?
I know.
I'm gonna pilot from here if that's okay with us.
Sure. Go for it.
So this is the 2019-2020 operations budget. I tried to make things as large as I could, although they're a little challenging to read. So my first slide is non-routine budget requests. These are the budget requests that go out all the buildings. They bring to me their requests for the year, for facilities and things. This year, they totaled $859,500 in requests, so I have to pare that down to $300,000, prioritizing the different needs that they have, and of course, safety, security, and then down they go through the list.
Right.
So I'm going to give you some examples of what they are. So some of the requests are cafeteria tables that are probably 20, 25 years old and sharp edges or not easily repaired anymore. And please stop, ask questions anytime through here. There's some flooring replacements. This is a vestibule where the flooring's coming up. It's served its life. It's time for new flooring. The scoreboard is at Central Middle School. It's 20-ish years old. I believe it's probably 20 years old, 25 now. And they've repaired it so many times that at this point it's not really repairable. It's time for replacement. It's a new version will be LEDs. These are incandescent lamps, and they just can't get parts for it anymore. And it's the only scoreboard they have in the gym that's mostly non-functional. Moving along, this is somewhat representative of some of the bathrooms in the district. This particular one's at Bedminster. It's not real easy to see if I could zoom in, or if you look at the bottom of the toilet partitions, they're swollen, they're particle board, they're coming apart. I actually had the Department of Health out this week, and this is one of the bathrooms that they said we need to address as soon as possible. If you look at that sink between the backsplash and the top, the white line, that's actually caulk about 3/4 of an inch thick. That's a little beyond repairs at this point. It's a total redo, and it's Formica. As soon as you get water under that, it swells up and it's no good. Some exterior painting projects that we have. This is a fuel oil tank that's outside. There's several schools that have above ground tanks, and obviously it's considerably rusty. It needs to be protected. So we're gonna have some of those tanks painted. The exterior, this is a gym wall. This one's at Bedminster. There's 2 locations that need similar painting. If you look to the left of the man doors, you can see how the paint's coming off. It actually looks worse in person than it does in the picture. This is the auditorium at South Middle School. And again, this is probably one of the oldest facilities we have. Their theatrical lighting control systems hanging on by a thread. And I think this has been on their non-routine budget request for several years. It is somewhat pricey, but I found a way to do it in phases. If we do the main controller, which is pictured at the bottom left, and then some of the lighting that are in there, we could do it in phases, so it's not, if we did everything at once, we're probably talking $250,000. And this isn't something they use every day, but it's something that to have parity between the elementary or the middle schools. The other schools have way better systems than they do. Just trying to catch them up so they have a parity amongst middle schools. This is South Middle School as well. These are the wooden bleachers in the gym, and they had a request to motorize these for the extend and retract. Right now, people are pulling these out. It's an accident waiting to happen. They're really hard to pull out, and they get serviced every year, lubricated, but it's manually. You're bending over like this, makes my back hurt to think about it. So if they pull them out on a regular basis, I'm not sure that it's daily, but it's definitely weekly. And to add that motorized function is just good practice to save someone's back.
The other ones, the other middle schools have motorized ones.
Just about every other one has motorized. These are the wooden ones, and it's one of those, that's how they've done it for years. So they've continued doing that until we could afford to do an upgrade. They don't need a replacement. The wooden bleachers are in good shape. If they weren't, we'd look at doing a total redo. And I did compare costs. It's almost double to do all new bleachers as compared to adding this motorized extension or traction. In this slide, blackboards, I believe in the past we've tried to convert blackboards to whiteboards just because that's more modern, more colors, more flexibility, less dust. And we actually have skins that we're using. There's different versions of doing this. Here we've put custom sized whiteboards over top of blackboards. We've done metallic skins that are glued right to the blackboard. And there's a new version, it's kind of like a thick wallpaper that you can spread out on it. We just did a test pilot a week or so ago at South, and I'm pretty happy with the product. We did it in-house, so we bought the product and we had our guys install it. They were real happy with it. Some blackboards are appropriate, like for art, for chalk drawing and things, but this is for mainly classrooms and such, where whiteboards are the way to go today. Some of the other things are some interior painting. On the far right, those are heating baseboard covers. They've been cleaned so much that the paint's starting to come off. And the lockers don't really do it justice from the pictures, but they're getting banged up and starting to rust. So we're proposing painting of several lockers. This is at South and at Central Middle School. Next one is interior painting, just regular drywall and block. These are typical. I think the one on the top left must have been a previous roof leak. The one in the middle, teachers like to hang things with tape and staples and you end up pulling paint off. It just becomes unsightly and we don't want to have that kind of standard in classrooms. Same with the picture on the right. We need to provide some other things like you see in here. There's tack strips where you can hang things appropriately. It's probably a good solution to work towards in the future, giving them tack strips so they can hang things where they need them rather than causing this repetitive damage year after year. And I think that was the last slide on non-routine requests. Any questions on non-routine?
With the auditorium upgrade at South, why wasn't that put on the capital projects? It seems like something that could be a capital project.
Good question. It's probably because it's something I think we could handle in-house.
Okay.
It's why pay for the construction management, develop those specifications. It is a strand lighting system, and that's common maybe throughout the entire district for theatrical lighting. So I think it's something in-house that I can piecemeal and get done through this budget process. Good, ready to move on, everyone's tired? Okay. So this is the.
That was his goal. I mean, you last.
I can
Do we have any
nail
questions?
it, right. So this is the regular operations budget. It's the 2600 function and object codes. And I broke it down into individual sections and I omitted blank lines and zeros and those kind of things to condense it, make it easier to read. So the way I have it laid out, you have the 2600 function, the object code, a description, the 1718 actual that was expensed, the budget for 1819, this year's requested budget, and then the variance between those last two. And I'm going to explain the variance between the last two unless you have other questions. So in the first one that is a plus variance, 13,270, that's our property and liability insurance. The actual quote came in 13,270, higher than last year. So we're budgeting for actual expenses that need to be paid. The next line item, transport and telecommunications, is a decrease of $10,000. If you look at the actual was $70,000, I'm just trying to creep closer towards actual budget costs. Being relatively new, I don't know everything that comes out of these, so I don't want to take it down 20,000. I just want to get closer to the actual budget next year. If we're still consistently that low, we could dial it down a little bit further.
So you think it will be 10,000 more than,
It's possible, I'm just not familiar with what exactly comes out of there. I know their phone, probably internet, those kind of charges come out of this account. I need to find out what they really are. Are we getting the services we need? Are we getting too much? I need to get a better handle on it, being the short timer. I think it's fair to reduce it by 20 or 10,000 now, just because the 17-18 actual was 70,200 basically. I think that's a fair reduction at this point. So we have in variance plus $10,000 on the technology supplies and fees. If you look at the actual, that was almost $10,000, and the prior budget was $5,000, so there was already a discrepancy there. And something, this was actual an ad from me request. So part of this cost is school dude, if you've heard of that. It's our maintenance work order, preventive maintenance system, facility scheduling that we use throughout the district. There was an extra module that I used in my previous district that helped save time and optimize things. It's something called FS Automation. It's something that links our facility scheduling program with our HVAC systems. So on a regular basis, for example, the facility manager here in the high school, he has to look at all the approved events in this building, and on a weekly basis, maybe even daily basis, he has to see what was in, what's approved, go into the HVAC system and schedule on different rooms.
Oh my gosh.
So that's time consuming. I asked, how long does that take you in a week? Sometimes it takes up to 10 hours of his time,
Oh my gosh.
because you need to check it. Someone could put a request in today for something tomorrow, and to make sure that you're having heating or cooling when you need it. Right now, I don't know if we'd really notice if this wasn't on or not, but when it's really hot, really cold out, you know, especially if you have a big event, someone misses a schedule, it's a problem. The gym's too hot, the auditorium's too cold, whatever it might be, just looks bad to the public.
Yeah.
The system, once it's fully configured, will automate that whole process, save time for the facility manager, and make sure things are scheduled on. There's a higher initial startup cost, it's this year. I'll probably be able to reduce this by a few $1,000s. There's one-time setup fee, and there's a recurring cost every year. So this will likely be able to be reduced next year.
Nice.
Ready for the next
I
slide?
have one question.
Question.
Did we get any explanation from the insurance carrier what drove the increase?
So that, the numbers we have budgeted now throughout for insurance are their first budget for the year that they give us.
Okay.
They'll come back to us in May with revised numbers. And then the final numbers will get, they'll come back to us in
Okay.
May and June with the final numbers.
Okay.
But they always come in with their first budget numbers conservative.
Okay.
And then the last few years, it's bent down a little bit, not tremendously, but went down a little bit. So we budget the budgeted numbers they give us. They usually come in January,
Okay.
and then we give those numbers to all the department heads, to put in their budgets.
Because, like I said, just looking at it on the surface, over the past 2 years, it's $25,000 increase, give or take. And I wasn't sure if there was something driving it, did we have claims or,
Not in the general property and liability, we don't really have claims. It goes up every year because our values go up.
That's what I was, okay.
Okay, next. So this slide represents utility usage district-wide. So the three main components of that are natural gas, electricity, and fuel oil. And it's hard to see, but this is, the left side is 2009, and the right side is 2018. So natural gas is driven by weather. If it's colder outside, you're gonna have higher expenditures. Fuel oil is the same. Fuel oil is a little bit different. We have some buildings that are exclusively on fuel oil, but we have others that are on dual fuel. When we get to a certain temperature outside, extremely cold, I think it's around 19 degrees, where we're required to go on the fuel oil only when we're at that temperature. So that could explain some of those spikes that you see in those graphs. Yes?
Before you finish talking.
No, go ahead.
So the electric one, I guess we've leveled off we did that whole renovation of the different systems, is this it now, we're not gonna be experiencing
So, good question. So 2009 was the year that was our baseline. We hired Aramark to come in and do optimization. And they probably, like I had in my former district, they're given so much money to allocate towards new equipment, optimizing schedules, getting your board policy for temperatures. And that's why you have that as your baseline year. Every year after that theoretically should be lower, although you see fuel oil that crept up higher for some of those. Can't necessarily explain that, but there is a trending decrease for most of those. I agree, electricity seems to be flatlined at this point, because everything uses electricity. There's things that we should look at in the future, like interior lighting converted to LED. There's a cost for that, but there's also a payback period. Something we should look at in the future of doing some major projects, especially in Percy Borough, where we pay more electricity rates.
Okay.
So,
Are we tied to the borough?
Yes.
yes, 2 schools.
Oh,
Two schools,
yeah.
okay.
I was thinking this.
All right, we have PICO for Bedminster only, PP&L for the remainder, and 2 that are on Percy Borough.
Gotcha.
Is it Southville and South? Or Southville and South?
South.
It is definitely Guth,
It should be south.
And
probably.
south, I
South's
believe.
partially in one and partially in the other, that's, it
Oh,
was built
yeah,
in
that's
South
why I was-
Burke.
right,
Sure.
South School is
1930.
West Rock Hill, I believe.
And for the schools that were not tied to the borough, are you shopping the electric?
So we have locked in, so we use Amorex for a broker, and we have actually really good rates. Quakertown was in that same process that we negotiate rates, and there's different vehicles we use. You can heat rate in the past. This year, I believe we have a straight locked-in number for kilowatts.
Okay.
So we actually have a good rate. I think we're locked in for 2 more years, which that's amazing. Utility costs rarely go down, they're usually up.
That's good. All right, I was just
You
curious.
actually locked that in, the board actually voted to lock that in probably 2 years ago, that was a 5-year deal.
Something.
And it was very, very good.
Okay.
5 years.
All right, good, thank you.
So this is gonna allude to the next slide where there's some reductions because we have trended down. We're trying to trim numbers to get closer to actuals, but not as aggressively as we probably should because weather could change and that affects it. We never want to go negative. We just want to budget close to it. So we'll start at the top. There is a $30,000 give back for professional technical services in this operation of buildings sub-account. Just professional services. And again, I don't know all the separate line items of that, but historically, we can spend that, so we want to trim it down to get closer to actuals. In the water and sewer account, we're asking for a $75,000 increase because historically, you've exceeded the budget of $200,000. And I looked at a 3-year look back to make sure that this wasn't an anomaly. We're actually using more, so we're increasing the budget to get closer to the actuals. Our next contracted services for buildings, it's a $54,000 reduction, just based on actuals. This is the one account that $300,000 for the non-routine budget gets put in. If it needs to be transferred into a different account because it's a different type of expense, it originates from here and moves around as needed. The next one, contracted services for equipment, is a reduction of $10,000. This is just recategorized, I believe. There wasn't a history in 17-18. We budgeted for 20, we're just taking a $10,000 reduction. I'm just looking at how we categorize things and try to account for those the right way as we spend money throughout the year. So now we're into utilities. Natural gas had an $18,000 reduction. Which is again trying to get closer to actuals, but don't want to be underfunded whenever we need to pay our bills. Next is electricity, a $50,000 reduction. When I looked last year, we actually gave back, or had a negative $192,000 variance that it was trying to trim it down to get closer. We were somewhere like $1 million or 1.2, somewhere in that range. So we're trimming down, trying to get closer to actual, so we're budgeting appropriately, but not going negative. The next one's a $17,000 reduction, and that's in the fuel oil. You saw all those are trending down. This is the one that seemed to be a little more volatile in past years, so just trimming it down, trying to get closer.
Well, the electricity we did take down, and we talked about taking it down further, but we decided not to do that with the project this summer with air conditioning in the elementary buildings, and that'll have an impact on electricity costs, so we thought we had some room to come down, and we really wanted to be careful about how far we went down until we saw the impact of that air conditioning.
Good point. We don't know exactly how much that's gonna increase, but expect it to have some impact. Any questions on that slide? Okay. Next, this is sections of, again, it's a 2600, but it's grounds maintenance, athletic maintenance, and equipment maintenance. So this one requires a little more explanation. So the first two line items, a $9,500 reduction and a $5,000 reduction. These had to do with Poppy Yoder Field. Historically, we always fertilized it, did extra services there to maintain it, make it our best field. Now that all those games are being played here at the stadium, I want to take that money out and turn this into a sports field fertilization program. Something I did in my past district. I can buy a machine for $9,500 essentially that we can do our own fertilization, and for $5,000 a year buy the product to do that. So get the machine and fertilize. We can fertilize all 3 elementary schools' fields. So when you see that baseball field that's all yellow in the outfield field of dandelions, it won't happen in the first year because it takes some time to build that up. But we can transfer that money and in-house do fertilization. So those 2 negative impacts in the capital equipment new, it's $59,500. The $5,000 is a base that we have a tractor and mower replacement. I have schedules of those and 2 slides from now to talk about that, but $50,000 of that is an allocation towards replacing mowers and snow removal tractors. And then the additional $9,500 is that fertilization machine. And we look down to the $5,000 under general supplies under athletics, that's the supplies for fertilization. So basically taking the contracted service and things that we're doing just at Poppy Yoder Field and doing all the middle schools and high school fields that need that extra fertilization. It plays into athlete safety, appearance, all those kind of things. Questions besides the $50,000 number? Okay, next slide. So this is the end of the budget. There's only one line item on this that has a variance. It's automobile liability insurance. The quote we got was $1,815 more than what was previously budgeted. Questions on that? Okay, so the last ones I have is, so this is our vehicle replacement plan. And there wasn't a variance in this account, but I can go back to that and find it. I believe in here should be a line item for a vehicle replacement. Okay. Oh, okay, there was, okay, it's in that same slide. So under capital equipment new, $60,000 for a replacement plow truck or like-kind vehicle, and I'll go through the list we have for the vehicle replacement plan, which starts here. So this is a list of all the maintenance vehicles we have, and majority of these are set up to plow snow throughout the district. Some of these are exclusively just a salt plow truck that isn't used daily by a maintenance guy to travel between buildings. So the prioritized, and this is something I inherited, and I just re-spun it up so I have it forward to excellent. The very top line is a truck that we just obsoleted, and that's top of the line for replacement. So that'd be a 1920 replacement year. Then the next one down is that 2006 Chevy bucket truck, and then the following year, this Chevy dump truck. So we're just looking at trying to replace a maintenance vehicle on an annual basis as needed. Right now we have poor and fair poor conditions that these trucks are in need of replacement. and I have a mower tractor list that follows this last slide I have in this. Any questions about the vehicle plan?
Any 2 0-turn mowers in the district?
We do, I have
Just
that on
two,
the,
right.
oh, total number?
Yeah.
That's on my next slide. Honestly, couldn't tell you how many we have, but we could probably count them up on the next list. So this is all the mowers and tractors, so we have a combination of just straight grass cutting, maybe 0 turns. We have, what you'll see is listed as a Steiner, that's a multi-purpose kind of tractor. It has a cab, you can cut grass with it. You have a snow blower attachment, a brush attachment, a plow attachment. So it's a versatile type tractor that we have throughout the district. They're easy to repair, we do all the repairs in-house on them. We have a few pieces of John Deere equipment. I see a Kubota, some of those 0 turns, but yeah, I think we're trending towards 0 turns because speed and the way that they do a good job of cutting. So if that's not a tractor combination, it's a good way to get the job done. And this is the same thing. We have ones that are in very poor condition, just trying to have a cycle of replacement that we're accounting and making sure we have equipment that's up and running well. Any questions on the mower tractor replacement? That's the end of that list. Any general questions about the budget?
No, but good job.
Thank you, we're approaching the 10 o'clock hour and I have one more.
Oh,
Oh, it's already queued up, good. Okay, we're ready for the next?
Yes.
So this is a proposed staffing addition. So the proposed staffing addition is for an assistant director of operations. And previously, we had a similar position filled here in the district. Tony Secreto, he was the person that filled that job. He retired in December of 2015. I believe he was here 8 to 10 years. He was the custodial supervisor. And the premise of this position is to do that kind of role, but I'll lead you through that. I did research to try to justify why it's needed, how it makes sense, how other school districts do things. But to give you a scope of what we have here at Penridge, the operations department has over 70 employees, 13 buildings that have 1.4 million square feet, 340 acres of land. So PASBO, I'm sure you've heard of them, familiar with, they have a lot of information to help out school districts, and they have subcommittee of facilities that regional chapters of Delaware Valley School Facility Managers. I sent an email out to that large group, it's over 100 staff. I only got about a dozen responses back. My questions were, what's your square footage? How many maintenance FTE, grounds, mid-level managers, and most similarly sized school districts close to us have more than one of these mid-level managers. My next slide shows the survey results. I condensed it down to the things that made more sense. So we're the green line, Penridge School District, 1.4 million square feet, and that seemed to be the biggest point of data to look at as comparison to say, how many maintenance people do you need? How many custodians? How many grounds? How many mid-level managers? So if you go down the list, and it is going down to 829,000 square feet of the different school districts, you can see, I'm not sure which column it is, number 6, number of mid-level managers. And the last column is those specific managers that those school districts actually have specific staff to do those jobs. So this is a comparison of local school districts in the Delaware Valley. They're not all Bucks County, obviously, but it's ones that are similar size to us, how they staff. I don't know that you can really look at maintenance FTEs, custodial. To me, it made more sense to look at total building square footage, because you're managing skilled maintenance, grounds, a large number of custodians and facility managers. So that's the source data that I have, and I can move on to make some more specific connections. So what would an assistant director do? And I really target assistant director rather than custodial supervisor, because the basic